I haven't actually spent money on this card yet. It's all just been fake money that my credit card company gives me. Financial responsibility with Jake. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Not My Shop, because I do not own a lift. Instead, we're here at Zeph's shop with my new purchase, a 2009 Scion TC. Now, there are a lot of things wrong with this car, but I did get it for only $800. The reasons this car was so cheap are numerous, but it did run and drive here to the shop, so I can't complain too much. It did highway speeds just fine, and it actually drives pretty wonderfully. I think that for just a few $100s, we can get this thing back on the road and make it a decent daily driver. Will I keep it? Will I flip it? I'm not entirely sure yet. I do kind of like these things. I've been looking for one for a little while as a daily driver for my wife because it fulfills a lot of her personal wants. The main problem with this car is here in the engine bay, the transmission more specifically. It is a manual, which is great. That means that I don't have the common used car issues of a slipping transmission to worry about, where the clutch packs are going bad or the torque converter lockup's no good. None of that. The problem I do have to deal with is other mechanics. The previous owner took this car to a mechanic shop in order to have the clutch changed out. Pretty standard, reasonably cheap job, if you have the right person do it. In this case, the job was not cheap. It cost him his car. The mechanic took the transmission out, put a new clutch in, which I can tell the clutch feels great, but in the process, he cracked the entire transmission housing and now it leaks out fluid. The only way I can figure that this was done was while mating the transmission back up to the engine block, something got in between the two and bound up, or maybe some pin didn't align properly, and instead of taking it back off and giving it another shot, or another shot, or another shot, I've spent 2 hours trying to mate a transmission up before, mostly because I'm an idiot, but partly because it's just an obnoxious job to do. But homeboy that worked on this car was not dissuaded, and instead grabbed the biggest impact he could and sent it home, and whatever was wedged in the way did not get out of the way, and thus the transmission was just cracked. Now I can't see the crack. I think it might be inside the bell housing somewhere, but it is cracked enough that it is pouring fluid out when the car runs, and I'm sure I drove it here with no fluid in the transmission. Now I could take the transmission out, have the crack welded, put it back together, and hopefully it seals, or these transmissions are like $250 in good used condition, so I'm not even going to worry about it. It is becoming landfill, and I'm getting a new transmission from the salvage yard, hopefully tomorrow, if we get the trans out of here tonight. And that means we're starting here in the engine bay. I hopped in the car real quick to get away from all of the mosquitoes, and honestly, the interior here is pretty neat. You got the 2 sunroofs, there's a touchscreen Sony radio, steering wheel's in mediocre condition, got some steering wheel controls that don't work. Of course, the all-important manual transmission with a disgusting shift knob. Seats are meh, but yeah, it's all right. Problems that I noticed with this car, the windshield is cracked all the way from one side to the other, so that will need replaced. Front control arms seem like they're bad. I think I heard a wheel bearing noise, but that might have just been the transmission eating itself because it leaked out all its fluid, so really not a whole lot wrong here. It drove straight down the road. Oh, there is a tire that was flat, so it'll need a tire, but it drove pretty straight down the road, and there was like a minor vibration at 65. Whatever, I'll take it. I bought this thing sight unseen. Well, not sight unseen. I bought this thing in the dark without driving it or anything. I just went up, looked at it, and as soon as he started it up and I saw how well the engine ran, I was like, yes, done, and PayPal'd them money. Actually, I put it on my credit card. I haven't actually spent money on this card yet. It's all just been fake money that my credit card company gives me. Financial responsibility with Jake. It's a good time. Anyway, my monster and I are going to look up how to get this job done. I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to film because we're actually kind of going to be jamming to try and get this as far along as we can tonight. I'm hoping to have the transmission out by the end of the night so I can go buy one tomorrow. Wish me luck. This car is missing a prop rod, so it's pretty much totaled. Anyway, the order of operations here is monster. Then remove battery tray, remove airbox and air hoses, remove starter, remove clutch slave cylinder, then go underneath the car, remove axle nut, remove sway bar end link, remove 3 bolts out of the lower control arm so the spindle can dangle freely, cup the balls, pull the axle out from both ends, do the same on the other side, then support the engine with an engine support bar, remove 2 motor mounts from this side, remove the shift cables and bracketry. I think there's some grounds on the trans that need to come out. Then, from underneath the car, there's a big longitudinal support bar that needs to come out, and that unbolts from a motor mount. At that point, everything will be dangling freely, and I think we start undoing bell housing bolts at that point. So it's actually extremely straightforward, and there's a lot of room to work in here. Also, I just now noticed this. That's all gonna go away. Don't like any of that. Congratulations! It's a bouncing pile of parts, and here's where those parts used to be. All the airbox stuff is out of the way, got the starter motor out, got the clutch slave cylinder out, and realized what might have been another problem with this car. This soft line was completely twisted up. The clutch pedal felt a bit weird and engaged right off the bottom, and it looks like this might be a new-ish slave cylinder, so I'm assuming that some combination of this needing bled and that line being pretty much completely kinked was causing that crappy clutch feel, so that's nice. Got all the wiring undone here, lots of questionable stuff going on there for the sound system and whatnot. Trying to remember what's next. I think so. There's a bracket on the back for the shifter cables, but it's got bolts that I can't get to. So I think the next thing is get the wheels off and get the axle nuts off and all that stuff. Well, the wheels are off, revealing these very sporting brakes here with red calipers and extreme brake pads. And I think I found my suspension clunk. That end link is absolutely shot. Got the axle nut out using this 30 million point socket that I bought for way too much money at O'Reilly's. And so now that that's off, for which I used an Allen key braced against here and then a crow's foot. I guess you could use a regular wrench as well, but I found the crow's foot before I found a regular wrench. So now we just take off these 3 bolts down here, and the control arm can sort of dangle, and we can pull this off of the axle, and I need to get a pry bar to remove the axle from the transmission itself, and it's just that hard. After far too much effort, we were rewarded with this funny looking dumbbell and this much worse dumbbell over here. And I take back anything nice I said about how these cars are to work on, because this was horrible. You've got this enormous press fit with a whole lot of surface area for it to rust together. Absolutely horrible to get apart. Furthermore, this bolt here is on the top of this axle intermediary shaft, which is right here. How are you going to get to the top of that on this side? You can get to it on this side, but not the other one. That was not super pleasant, but also doesn't look like it's been off in a very long while, so whoever did the transmission doesn't seem to have taken this axle out, which is a little suspicious. I wonder if they tore up... Shoot, I wonder if our leak isn't a crack. I wonder if it's a messed up output shaft or output seal. I've seen a couple varying methodologies on how to go about the rest of this online, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and suspend the engine with the engine bar, and then undo all these bolts under here and drop this entire subframe out so I have more than enough room to work on the transmission here. Really the only thing attached to it other than these control arms, which are already unbolted, is the steering rack, which is these studs sticking through here, I believe. These 4, 5 maybe? Engine is supported, more or less, by the world's most overkill engine support. I just put one of the starter bolts into a thing over there, and then there's a motor mount over here. So yeah, that's 2 points of connection, sure. I took this motor mount bracket off of the trans itself so it won't be in the way when we drop it down, and took out all the bell housing bolts I could get to. I think I'll take that motor mount out from the bottom, or trans mount I guess in this case, torque mount, who knows, and I'll drop the entire subframe off the bottom, I suppose. Some people are saying though that you don't have to drop the subframe, so maybe we'll try that first. Well, isn't that just the cutest thing? It's got little molded in arrows pointing to where the jack points are. I didn't even see those. And yet, I nailed it. Also, I love all these spots where someone tried to start like on some body work. You know, the door, okay, yeah, you want your door to look neat. And then right here always confused me, because yeah, you gotta get that spot really nice on this completely trashed fender. Makes sense. The next day. It's also 9 p.m. and I'm just getting started. Also, there's a thunderstorm happening and it looks like my lens is a bit wet. Also, I just realized I need to turn around and go home because I forgot to bring the batteries for my stuff that I had charging. Also, the roof leaks, so it's also raining inside. But here's where we left off last night when I rage quit. This cross member here that runs front to back, every guide and video that I saw shows you unbolting up here where it attaches to the core support, and then undoing some bolts here that go to this mount, or undoing that mount itself, which as you can see is done. And then there's a couple bolts back here, 1, 2, 3 looks like, and then it should just fall out. But it's not doing that because it's sandwiched underneath what appears to be the rear motor mount, and I can't get that rear motor mount to come out. I can get this nut off. I mean, there's just straight up no room for it to go anywhere. So I don't understand how that works. And then this stud just spins, and it's pretty evident that whenever this clutch was done by the mechanic that messed everything up, he never took this off. So how did he get the trans out without getting this cross member off? My theory is that he didn't, and that's probably how this got messed up in the first place, because that really has to be out of the way for you to get to bolts properly, and I'm guessing something got not in here straight because that cross member wasn't able to come out. So what we're doing instead is dropping the entire subframe, which in theory is very straightforward. There's some bolts here, you take off some plates, there's one, you take off those plates, and then there's some big bolts here and there. There's one there, there's one there, and then there's some nuts there on these studs. So we did that, and now it's just, I believe, the steering rack holding the subframe in place. So the only thing holding this on is, I believe, these two nuts here and that nut there. I honestly can't tell what holds the rack on because of how absolutely buried it is. But when I try to undo these, nothing happens. Even with my M18 fuel that can do like 1,400 foot-pounds, these don't spin. These 14mm bolts are nuts. And they are through bolts, so I have to somehow, you know, like you see here, wiggle a tool up there to put it on the other side. So that's where I'm stuck now. I straight up don't know how this is supposed to work. I'm very curious what AllData would say about this, but I don't have AllData, and I tried to ask on some forums. Nobody responded, and I could not find any threads dealing with this sort of thing. I tried to join a Facebook group, but they didn't approve my request, so I'm completely on my own with this stupid thing, and I genuinely am out of ideas. While I was elsewhere bricking a Volkswagen ECU, Zeph pulled a trans. I left this sitting with penetrating oil on it for a while, and I guess that was just, that was all that it really needed. That's getting a bit rusty. For whatever reason, this car is pretty much rust-free except for all the fasteners, which are an absolute shambles. But at any rate, the trans is out, and I don't see a crack. What I do see is this random washer and bolt rattling around in here. I took that clip off of the throwout bearing. Don't worry about that. And then this kind of has like what looks like a questionable reseal job. At any rate, who knows how long this was driven with potentially low fluid in it, so I'm just going to get a new transmission regardless, and we'll throw it in here. What sort of shape is this bearing in? Pretty good. I'm definitely going to replace this mount after seeing what an absolute pain it is to get to, and it's kind of marginal, and it's a torque mount, so it has a pretty big effect on drivability, so I'll get a new one of those coming, and then tomorrow I'm gonna go see about that guy. Oh no, we blew up the Buick engine. Never mind, it's actually right over there. Ew, this thing is filthy. I really should have someone detail this or something. Anyway, I got a new transmission, which is not in here because Zeph actually has stolen it, already throwing it back up in the car. I, of course, being my own clumsy self, have injured my finger, so I'm not going to be super useful, so I think he's just going to strongman this thing up into the car on his own, which is real homie hours. Also, yeah, new transmission. Oh, wait, no, that's the new transmission. It was $250, so pretty much a no-brainer versus trying to fix the old one. Thank you, Auto Recyclers of Kansas. That place has great service and pretty reasonable prices. Unfortunately, I just usually have weird oddball stuff that they don't have, but luckily this time was a exception to that rule. Being the genius that I am, I got all the way here and realized that I forgot the motor mount, so I turned around and got the motor mount. I also got some delicious and very healthy anxiety juice, and I come back and the trans is installed, and it's just it's up there chilling. So that's neat. Looks like the front bracket's on. Some amount of bolts are installed. Well, I think all of them that you can get to from the bottom at least. So after a lot of struggle, here's where we're at. We had to drop the steering rack down to get the stupid motor mount over the rack because it kind of goes between these lines and straddles the rack on both sides there, and there was no way that that exhaust piece was coming out because it's a little bit rusted and those would have definitely broke. But in order to do that, we made the mistake of undoing the steering coupler, and I don't know if you can see it up in there. That's the slip joint for the steering coupler. This is like the only modern car I've seen without a telescoping steering intermediate shaft. And so it's just kind of stuck turtling inside that absurdly stiff rubber cover. And so getting these lined up so that they'll mate back up and also wrestling the steering rack back straight is proving to be an absolute nightmare. I think I'm gonna see if I can find a factory service manual for sale. I kind of forgot those were a thing, honestly. I'm just so used to following YouTube videos and whatnot. Dawn of week 3 of working on this turd. I just spent quite a bit of time up in the car, folded into a pretzel to get that steering column reattached from inside the car, which is apparently how you're supposed to do it according to the factory service manual. Not that that was much easier than what we were attempting before. I spent a half hour just kind of up there screaming because my back decided to spaz out. Got the shift cables hooked back up, and then I got this cross member sort of in. You can see here how the rear motor mount comes down and like bolts through this thing and then into the subframe. So I have absolutely no clue in hell how all the tutorial videos I watched on this were able to just pull this cross member out. It doesn't seem like it's possible. I mean, there's a stud going through it. So yeah, we're gonna hang the subframe. As you can see, this thing needs steering baffles and all that crap. We'll do that later. I just want to get it driving right now. At this stage, I don't think I'm going to keep this car. I don't really want to own another Toyota because I work on all my cars. And I don't want to work on this. I won't mind driving it though for a little while. It seems like a neat little car. It'll make someone a good car as long as they decide not to mess with it at all. That's it. It's all together. The underside, well, the underside is together at least. I still hate it. A whole lot of stuff going on here, very little of it good, but it's all bolted back together, so that's what counts. Got the axle back in, well, both axles back in, steering rack in, bolted down, rear motor mounts bolted in, front motor mounts bolted in, cross members bolted in, ball joints are even bolted in. Wow, goodness gracious, we left nothing to, something. Anyway, let's lower the car down, and now I can just wrap up a few things on the top. Wow, stuff has happened. We've got the clutch slave in. The clutch soft line isn't all tangled up this time. We've got the starter in. Took the starter back off so I can put the ground on the right way. All the shift linkages are all tight and secure. All the bell housing bolts are in and torqued. We've got a whole bunch of the wiring harness clips and brackets and that kind of fun doodads put together. So I think it's time to start putting the air box and the battery tray in here. Then we fill that thing up with fluid, and that's it, we're done. This M12 ratchet is an instrument of the devil, the amount of times it has smashed my already smashed finger into various garbage in the engine bay when tightening it down. At any rate, look at this. It's an engine bay, more or less. Whatever this hideous wiring is here, I got it all detached from above. I'm gonna pull it down out the bottom and cut it all out. I think it's for like some fog lights, even though these look factory, so I don't know what all the wiring is, but I would rather not have fog lights than have all that garbage wiring, so it's going away either way. So now we gotta lift this back up, put the wheels on, and fill the trans with fluid. Oh, and I need to crawl inside the car and put the steering linkage shenanigans all back together. So the list is getting whittled down. And look, no leftover bolts over here. Amazing. I kind of figured I'd have some spare hardware after something like this, especially taking a 4-week break in the middle of the project. Okay, after spilling only a bunch of gear oil everywhere, it's time to see what I forgot. There's neutral. See what I forgot to hook up. Seems to be pretty happy. Clutch feels way better. Oh shoot, this thing has CarPlay? And Android Auto? Are you serious? I'm taking this radio out and keeping it. Oh, that is idling so nice and smooth. Oh yeah. It was a little bit confused. It had to figure its life out. Did you ever
put fluid in the trans?
I did put fluid in the trans. I only spilled most of it on the ground.
Oh yeah.
Well, the fill, what I was using to fill it with sealed so good that I overfilled it. So then I was like, surely it's full by now. And I pull the thing out and the fluid starts gushing out. I'm like, oh okay then. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, here it is. It made it home. And now we can actually take a look at it in the light. I had actually never seen this car in the daylight before until I got it home. And it doesn't do it many favors. You've got, you know, extreme amounts of started and never finished bodywork going on here. We've got the cracked windshield. The sunroof works eventually. Since I disconnected the battery, I had to do a sort of procedure to calibrate it before it would work properly. Looks like, I don't know, someone's tried to break into it and did a very bad job of it, so I'll probably skim that with some body filler. Let's see here. Inside the car, the interior is okay, except for this seat, which looks and smells like someone had an ass-splosion. Back seats are pretty dirty, currently folded down. I love these lift back coupes. There's so much space back there, and it's so easy to use as well. It really is just kind of the best layout of car. Oh yeah, they definitely tried to break into it. Look at this seal. Absolutely destroyed. Hopefully that... Oh my gosh, just call AAA, guys. Or a cab company. A lot of times if you call a cab company, they'll come unlock your car for you. What else do we have? That tire has a nail in it, needs replaced. Under the hood here we have, I mean, we've seen all this, but we can take a better look here. No leaks really to speak of. Looks like the valve cover was leaking and has potentially been replaced. If not, it looks like an easy enough job to do, but for the most part, everything is pretty neat and tidy here. I think I might need to bleed the clutch. I'm not sure if these are kind of self-bleeding or not. It does have a bleeder screw on it. Looks like it shares brake fluid, and I need a prop rod for this thing. Holding it up like this is really annoying. But yeah, everything else looks fairly copacetic back here. Nothing too worrying. Yeah, we'll just keep walking around here. What paint is here is pretty faded. We've got a very sporting spoiler. Oh, this taillight assembly is absolutely smashed. I wonder if I can get into one of those. The handle is broken like it is on seemingly all of these. Luckily, that's a super cheap part. Honestly, taillights aren't too expensive either. All the back glass is in good shape. Interesting to note, though, the entire roof of this car is glass. All of it. It's all just panels of glass. This side of the car overall is in much better shape. You know, body damage is far more minimal, though that mirror cap up there is completely destroyed. But yeah, it is a car. And hopefully in the next episode we can take care of some of the quality of life issues that this thing has to make it really drive quite a bit nicer. But until then, thanks for watching.